Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first Common Hour of the 2018-19 academic year. My name is Rick Moog. I'm chair of the Common Hour Committee and professor of chemistry here at F&M. Next week's Common Hour will be held back in its regular location in Mazer Gymnasium and will feature Burwood Yost, director of the Floyd Institute Center for Opinion Research and the Floyd Institute for Public Policy, addressing the question, should we trust what the polls are telling us about the 2018 midterm elections? To begin, I'd like to thank this week's pizza servers, the Catastrophic Relief Alliance. Let's give them a hand. The Catastrophic Relief Alliance is a student organization that provides support by rebuilding homes afflicted by natural disasters and housing distress. CRA was formed after the devastation of Hurricane Katrina in 2005, and members have been making yearly trips to afflicted areas ever since, including trips to Oklahoma City and Houston this past year. CRA also does local work through our Rent a Worker program and with organizations such as Milagro House, a transitional housing and support system for homeless women, and South Ann Concerned Neighbors. Catastrophic Relief Alliance, rebuilding homes, restoring dreams. I'd also like to thank the students who have volunteered to help us with setup and pizza serving today, including the House advisors from Schneider and Thomas. And finally, I'd like to thank the public safety. We're going to be ending Common Hour today at 12:25 rather than the typical 12:30, so that people will have time to get to 12:45 classes. And public safety has responded to this very recent change in venue by having a couple of our trustee officers outside to stop traffic on Harrisburg Pike when we leave. So you'll be able to get to class on time. Let's thank them. As is our custom, at the end of Common Hour today, there will be a question and answer period at the end. Please plan to stay until the end of the question and answer period. And as I said, you'll be able to get to class on time. We're going to end at 12:25. For today, we're going to be taking questions from current members of the Franklin and Marshall College community when it's time for questions. And as always, we're going to give first priority to students. If you have a question, please come and form a line at this microphone when it is time for questions. We have one microphone today. Please form a line. We're going to encourage students to come first. If we have people lined up, then the speaker will have a sense of how many questions there are to answer. And when you ask your question, please state your name and class year or college affiliation. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Gretchen Meyers, Associate Professor and Department Chair of Classics. Gretchen.
Good morning. I am very pleased to introduce the president of Franklin and Marshall College, Dr. Barbara Altmann. I was honored last spring to serve as a member of the search committee for our 16th president. This type of service is vital in an educational community where the views of students, professional staff, and faculty are valued components in such a weighty decision. Our committee, chaired by Trustee Eric Knoll, brought together members of the Board of Trustees with faculty members, Associate Professor of History Douglas Anthony, Professor of Biology Janet Fisher, and myself, professional staff members Bruce Ballestier, the Campaign Director and Principal Gifts Officer, and Renee Yoder, Assistant to the Vice President of Admissions, and students Shaquela Flores, Class of 2018, and Tyler Schubert, Class of 2019. Renee and Tyler joined me on stage this morning for our conversation with President Altmann. I can tell you that we all took our responsibility on this committee very seriously, working long hours in a relatively short time to find the person who would lead F&M into our next chapter. Among a pool of very competitive candidates, Dr. Altmann rose to the top. I can recall clearly the first time I met her in this process. That day, seated at the head of a gigantic table, she spoke to the 16 members of our committee about wide-ranging topics and issues. I listened as she eloquently moved between her own studies of medieval French literature to the changing and often challenging landscape of higher education that she had become so immersed in through her administrative positions. Her words, with which she effortlessly bridged the past to the present and in turn illuminated the future, resonated deeply with me. As a classicist and a scholar of the past myself, I saw Dr. Altmann as a leader who embodies and articulates the very principles of the liberal arts education we are providing to our own students. President Altmann joined us as a member of the F&M community this August after serving as provost at Bucknell University since 2015. Prior to her arrival at Bucknell, Dr. Altmann served for more than 25 years at the University of Oregon. She was a professor of French, head of the Department of Romance Languages, and director of the Oregon Humanities Center, before spending her last 3 years at the university as senior vice provost for academic affairs. President Altmann received her bachelor's degree with honors in Romance languages at the University of Alberta. She earned her master's degree in French language and literature from the University of Toronto and her doctorate in medieval French language and literature from the same university. A firm believer in our tradition of education, President Altmann is eager to continue the national momentum and visibility F&M has garnered for its commitment to student development, expansion of college opportunity, and advocacy for the value and power of the liberal arts. Please join me in welcoming President Altmann.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Gretchen, for a very warm and gracious introduction. This place, this particular podium and this hall is the venue where I have been most often in my first 3 weeks. So I'm feeling very at home here, actually. It's great. And it's wonderful that every day when I look out at a group of people here on campus, I know more of you. So I'm really delighted by how many people came today. I see you still moving through the pizza and food line. I'm glad to see that you're getting well fed. And I have to say that Common Hour was one of the many things that attracted me to this campus. It's a great idea to stop everything and get together as a community once a week so that we can talk about anything and everything that is of common concern to us. So this institution, this particular event is really remarkable and it's really praiseworthy, and I will be with you for every Common Hour for which I am on campus. So it's a real honor to lead off this year's series. I want to echo what Rick said. I want to thank the Common Hour Committee. I know it's a lot of work to put these together. I am very grateful to the pizza servers. I've already heard from the folks who are associated with the Catastrophic Relief Alliance. It's a really admirable organization. And yeah, thank you all. Well done. And I'm also grateful to the common wisdom that decided that we would hold this event here today rather than in your usual venue, our usual venue, just because I think we'll all be happier here for an hour. The blessing of air conditioning will help keep us focused. There are any number of notable individuals in the room today, including family for one of our panelists. I also want to know who is our President of Diplomatic Congress, Brandon Schneider. Are you here? So there he is. There's another president in the room right there. Hi. And I want to acknowledge my husband, John Stacy, who's sitting on your right, my left. John, John has been an incredible good sport about moving with me to Lancaster for me to take this job, and he is working very hard to figure out what it means to be the college's first laddie, as we learned to call it. That's a term that we learned from Mayor Sirachi and her husband Christian. He decided he'd adopt the term first laddie, and we thought that was the best version of that we've heard. So John is figuring out what that means. I will reflect very briefly on Convocation only to say that it was a very happy and positive event for me. It was wonderful to have a couple of opportunities to sit and talk with just the first year class. They're a really wonderful class, a stellar class, and the amount of positive energy in this room, especially when the dancing started, was really a lot of attestation to the fact that we brought in another group of really terrific students. I won't say a whole lot more about beginning of term events because I'm sure they will come up as we talk. I wanted to explain, however, our format today and why I have 3 august interviewers here with me. This is a community event, and Franklin and Marshall is a community of many, many different kinds of constituencies. So we all thought it would be terrific to have me here as the visitor, but really to be engaged with 3 people. Tyler represents our wonderful student body. Renee is here to represent our professional staff. Gretchen is here on behalf of the faculty. And these were 3 of the search committee members. I will talk a little bit about the importance of that committee, I think, once we get going. So our format is just question and answer. We're ready to go, and we'll start handing a mic around. I think our first questioner is going to be Tyler.
All right, welcome everybody. Sorry about that. Welcome everybody to Common Hour. So I get the honor of starting us off today. Dr. Altmann, what were your first impressions of Franklin and Marshall, and how did they ultimately lead to your decision to join our community?
My first impression of Franklin and Marshall was, in fact, the search committee. Those were the first people I met on off-site interviews. I didn't come to campus for a little while. So you can imagine the power of a search committee, the way a school puts together its search committee and the people they put on it, and the way those chosen committee members interact with candidates can tell you a great deal about the school. And this committee was fabulous. It was balanced. It had all constituencies represented. Everybody was an active participant. They were all so well prepared. They were so engaged. Nobody nodded off, even though they'd been working for hours and hours by the time I got there. And so, frankly, I was very impressed with the 3 of you and the other 18 members of the search committee. Were there 21 of you in all, or 16? I kept 16. It felt like 63. It was a very big group from my end of the table. But so the 3 of you gave me a wonderful sense of what the F&M family is like and how you function. I then made a couple of stealth visits to campus. John and I jumped in the car on a Sunday morning and drove down here, not knowing that we were driving into the teeth of a raging snowstorm. So my first 2 views of campus were in the driving snow, and it looked so poetic and beautiful. It was gorgeous. We didn't mind getting soaked. And my second stealth visit was when the cherry trees were blooming. So I saw both seasons in a very short space of time. What I saw, though, was a campus that feels like a home, a campus that feels like it holds infinite possibility, a campus that provides an elite education with no pretension. It felt like a wonderful place where both of my 2 sons, who are very different from each other, would both have flourished and where I myself would have flourished. So I felt at home as soon as I got here and with this wonderful group of people. And I knew that if I were given the opportunity, I would join you in a heartbeat.
Well, we're just so thrilled you're a member of our F&M family, Dr. Altmann. You know, as I peer out into the crowd and see so many familiar student faces, professional staff colleagues, and esteemed faculty members, I am also reminded of how unique it is to work in a small residential setting where there are opportunities for the entire campus to gather. Can you tell us a bit more about what it means to be a part of the Franklin and Marshall College community?
Franklin and Marshall is one of the national liberal arts colleges, meaning that we are ranked well up in the top 50 liberal arts colleges across the country. And being a liberal arts college, a residential liberal arts college focused exclusively on undergraduate education, is a unique kind of educational opportunity. And I've talked about this in a couple of other venues, so a number of you will have heard me say this more than once. But what is unique about F&M and what F&M does particularly well is provide a 24/7 nurturing environment, a holistic approach to education. So our students, even if they're just a step off campus, and for those who are in the houses in particular and in the other residence halls, it is a place where you live every aspect of your lives. You live your academic life because that's our primary focus, of course, it's our mission, but you also live your social lives, your physical athletic lives, your spiritual life. Every facet of your life happens here or connected with the college. And that is a unique opportunity because we can educate and we can facilitate learning every moment of every day. So it is very different than other kind of campuses where you drive to campus from 30 miles out and go home again as soon as you're finished class, or if you're commuting in and taking classes only at night and holding down a full-time job. There are many other excellent institutions of education here, but F&M has a chance to do it in a way where the result is much more than the sum of its parts. And we see that. I know I will see that with this year's first year class. The amount of journey they will have traveled, the amount of progress they make in every conceivable way from their first day of class yesterday to their last day when we see them off to graduate, they will have been transformed. That cliche is true. And it's because of the power of this kind of education.
So I would love if you could share a little bit of your academic background and your professional background with our audience today, and in particularly think a bit about how your experiences as a professor and a scholar have shaped the core values that you're going to bring to your first year as president at F&M.
Sure. Well, I adore my field. I'm still as passionate about medieval French literature as I was the day that I first discovered it. I was lucky enough to back into something that I'm truly, truly fascinated with and passionate about. And finding that, which was a piece of very good luck for me, finding it in my last term as an undergraduate, made me realize just how critical it is for everybody to follow their passion in what they do professionally. It should be something that just makes your gut happy, that is endlessly interesting to you, that you want to think about when you're out on a run or in the shower or taking out the garbage. If you can find one of those things that is just of constant interest to you, you will have found a way, an avenue into a deeply satisfying professional life. So I was lucky enough to have that happen. I've always counseled my children to follow their own interests and passions, and they have done so and led me into areas of interest that I could never have anticipated for them or for myself. So that's one thing, but there are other things about being a medievalist. So medievalists always have to make sense. They have to make the case for their legitimacy in the profession, right? People say, why would we study the Middle Ages? What's the relevance? So I learned very early as a graduate student to make the case for the relevance of the Middle Ages. It is a question of continuities, and sometime, if you wish, anytime, I will give you the 6-minute lecture on how we are still recycling medieval material over and over and over again in popular culture. I can tell you about Valentine's Day cards and courtly love. I can tell you about the Star Wars trilogies and how that's actually a medieval construct from medieval epic. Give me 6 minutes and I'll convince you that we're still living in the Middle Ages. But I learned to make the case for what is not immediately relevant in people's eyes, and to get people to learn that the world of learning is much bigger than just their own particular burning question at the moment. As a professor, and I was full-time faculty for 23 years, I've told you this, some of you this as well. My course was always part of the major in French, and a lot of students had to take it, so they were required to do my courses in Introduction to Medieval and Renaissance Literature for their degrees. And so my favorite comment on a student evaluation form was always, "It wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be." The other thing, though, is that medieval studies is a very interdisciplinary field. I had to learn art history, I had to learn how to work with 600-year-old books, I had to learn various stages of the French language, I had to learn social history, political history, the history of material artifacts, religion, the history of religion in the Middle Ages. So it was a field that required of me competence and interest in a whole bunch of different disciplines, which means that I very early came to understand what a spectrum a great college and university covers. And it gave me a great deal of appreciation for my colleagues in earlier periods, even earlier periods, and in modern periods. Medievalists have to work up to the more recent. It is less frequent for people in more modern periods to work back, so we're always building the bridges.
So switching gears just a little bit, on behalf of the student population, we've heard you talk a little bit about your vision for the college for the first year. If you could just elaborate a little bit and describe what our students could do this year to help you achieve that vision.
Yes, absolutely. So what I have said to the first year class is that I want them to stretch in every possible way. I want them to stretch intellectually, I want them to stretch socially, I want them to stretch physically and even spiritually. And what that really is a metaphor for getting outside of your comfort zone, being willing to step outside what you already know and what you already know you can do well, and begin to explore, because you've got a better opportunity here than anywhere else at any other time in your lives to do that. So what can the students do? What the students can do is take advantage of what we offer and really explore and throw themselves into things where they're not sure they're going to be particularly good at it. It doesn't matter. It's the exploration that happens. We also really need, every one of us, faculty, administration, professional staff, but students too, we need to be ambassadors for Franklin and Marshall. We have this wonderful situation of being a partner to the city of Lancaster, which is just a huge, huge benefit for F&M. It is such a vital, wonderful city. It is getting such great press, and well-deserved, for being one of the best places to visit and one of the most vital small cities. It's the oldest inland city in the country, or one of them. So what we need to do is, whether it's in the city of Lancaster or well beyond, we need to make sure that we represent the richness, the fullness, the excellence of F&M, because really more than anything, getting our story out across the country into every possible venue is what's going to help us the most.
If we may, Dr. Altmann, let's talk a little bit about the future of F&M. Beyond your first year, what are the opportunities for the college over the next decade?
The opportunities are enormous. F&M is beautifully situated to continue to thrive. And my job as your new president is to sustain everything that is going so very well, and to make sure that we figure out how we can continue all those initiatives and what they look like in their next phase of evolution. So I've been working on a couple of sort of corny metaphors about how you think about this. One is an agricultural metaphor about we've grown this great crop and now we have to figure out how to sustain that and do crop rotation and soil amendment. And another metaphor is architectural. We've built something. The wonderful, excellent presidents who preceded me have built something that has changed the face of F&M, both physically here on campus and in our visibility to the world. And it's my privilege and my job to figure out how we keep sustainable structures in place and how we build that into the next chapter. So we will keep everything going that is going so well, and we will figure out how to continue to attract the biggest, brightest, best, most talented, most motivated group of students, because that's the lifeblood of this and any other college. So we'll be working on sustainability models of all sorts. And then we will see. I'll be doing a lot of listening, a lot of very active listening. I want to hear from all of you what you think our greatest successes, our greatest strengths, and our greatest challenges are. I've been working already very intensively with a senior team, helping to pinpoint where we need to do immediate work and intermediate term work and long-term work so that we have a very strong foundation on which to continue all the many, many successes of F&M. We want everybody around the country, and we want everybody in every country we can get to look at F&M and say, I can see myself there. I can see myself there, and I know that I can thrive there. That's the single biggest thing that we can continue to do.
I think we're all excited to be on this journey with you moving forward. And I want to talk a little bit about challenges. You have spoke at Convocation. Many of us were able to hear you speak at Convocation about one of the challenges in higher education now, which is the notion that the value of a liberal arts education is in crisis. So, how do you think your strategic priorities as president will help position F&M as a national leader among small liberal arts colleges?
Well, thanks to really great leadership before I arrived, F&M already is a leader in national liberal arts colleges. And I think the best thing we can do is continue to train students who go out into the world, whether to graduate school or into the professional world, who continue to excel in their professions and continue to provide leadership. If you look at almost any measure of success of college graduates, undergraduates who get their bachelor's degrees, by any measure, liberal arts grads excel. They do far better, no matter what their major, than almost any other kind of graduate. And so the crisis in the liberal arts is a little bit of a misplaced discussion for anxiety about where we're headed as a nation, I think, where we're headed, where our young people are going, and what we can do to keep pace with a world that is changing more rapidly than we can even imagine. The fact of the matter is, by employability, by access to graduate school, by average earnings 10 years after graduation, by flexibility to move from one professional field to another, liberal arts grads excel. And among liberal arts grads, F&M grads do particularly well. We're in a very, very small group that consistently places our graduates extremely well, and just watch them soar no matter what they come out of with their degree or what they choose when they leave. So what we need to do, I think, is stop worrying about the so-called crisis in the humanities and just demonstrate that the kind of education we provide is the key not only to a successful life, but also to a happy life. And that's a very important shift. We need to remind our potential students and their families that quality of life comes with a great education. And that's one thing we can do better than just about anyone else. I do want to talk about a challenge, though. F&M fights way above its weight in many ways. We do so much better than some of our measures would indicate. We have a solid endowment, but it is a modest endowment for a school of this size for us to do what we do. So one of the biggest opportunities, and you will see it launch in October, is the capital campaign that we're going to be launching on October 26th. We're going to be going flat out to raise money so we can continue what we do so well. And that, I think, will be an easy task because the value proposition that we have to offer potential donors, either individuals or corporate donors or any other partners, is very, very high. We have the great luxury of having an outstanding school to offer and to ask people to contribute to invest in us. So before too long, you're going to be seeing lots of signs of the capital campaign. I'm thrilled to get here in time to launch it with our colleagues in advancement, and every one of you will be involved in this in one way or another. So watch for it on True Blue weekend, the 26th, 27th, 28th of October.
All right, Dr. Altmann, on behalf of the seniors in the room, by the end of May, having received a great education over the last 4 years, what piece of advice would you like to share with seniors as they leave F&M?
Go tell our story. go tell your individual story. Tyler, you're one of our exemplary students. You've done a lot of things really, really well. So go out and don't forget where you got this training, right? Make sure that you become part of the F&M network. There will always be classes behind you who need your moral support and your practical support. And what we need for you is to show the world how good our graduating class is. So go out, tell the story, remain connected to the college. It's that lifeblood of alumni coming back that really helps us keep in tune with the world. We have to stay in step with what the professional world needs from our graduates, and our alumni are a huge piece in that. So that's my biggest piece of advice to you. Just keep me posted. Let me know what comes next, okay?
Okay, totally switching gears. I'm wondering if you can name a book that has had great impact on you and tell us why it was so influential.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I have to think through the stack on my night table. There are many things. I am, not surprisingly, and I'm sure like many of you, a great reader. One of the books that I recently read and was really dazzled by was a small volume that I mentioned in my convocation address, which is called The Usefulness of Useless Knowledge. It's a really great short essay on why there is no such thing as useless knowledge, why anything you learn is worth the investment it takes you to learn it, and why the production of knowledge in colleges and universities is so key. I'm also a big reader of fiction, though, so I will have an Ann Tyler book by my side at any time. I'm a big short story reader. I'm a big reader of poetry. I'm a big Wendell Berry fan as among the poets. I'll give you snapshots on another occasion, but if anybody wants to send me a suggestion for their favorite book at the moment, just zip me an email. I'm always looking for something else to read. John and I will have to arm wrestle for it because he's as big a reader as I am and he'll want it first, but we'll work that out.
So I'm going to ask you a question that may be a familiar question to some of my colleagues in the room as well, which is, if you weren't in academia, what do you think you'd be doing?
Having spent a very long time in the academy, it's actually hard for me to imagine that. But I can tell you a couple of detours that I tried and what the fallback plan was. So when I left my university after getting an honors BA in romance philology, I did what seemed most natural and I went to law school. Well, I spent 10 weeks in law school before I discovered that I had made a choice that was really not the choice for me. And I remember crystal clear the day that I went to announce to the dean of the high-powered law school I was at, and I said, Dean, I'm very sorry to tell you I'm going to withdraw. I've discovered that this is not the profession for me, and I think it's probably better if I leave sooner rather than later. I hadn't failed out yet. It wasn't even that early, right? I got out before I could do poorly in my first term. And I remember him saying, Miss Altmann, this is a deep and grave disappointment. You have taken a seat away from someone who would have made a magnificent lawyer. And so I felt sufficiently humbled and chastened, and then I went right across the campus to the French department and enrolled for some more French classes. I took gap years, and the gap years were really important to me. I took 2 years off between BA and MA and 2 years off between MA and Ph.D. I really needed that time to decide whether I really wanted to pursue an academic profession. And even when I enrolled for a Ph.D., I did not expect to become a professor. I knew that was the obvious career track, but the secret is, and I told our tour guides this the other day, I always expected to make my living waiting tables. It hasn't happened yet. It's never too late. There's very fine restaurants in Lancaster. I could make a lateral move if necessary.
So sticking with the theme, of seniors, say a graduate from the class of 2019 returns to campus 5 years from now. What changes do you expect, or would a student from that class expect to see on campus?
That's a good question, Tyler. I think one of the most obvious physical changes will be that the Winter Visual Arts Center will be up and open by then. It'll be open sometime around now next year. The rainy spring set us back just a little, but it'll be online before the end of 2019. And I think that really beautiful, beautiful, very bold architectural vision anchoring our campus at that end of College Avenue will be really a statement about how F&M, in all of its venerable old age, is still a very happening contemporary place and is deeply invested in making sure that we are current and that our students have the best facilities. I think there will be a mix of the reassuring and the new. At that point, if you come back a year from now, the campus will be full of wonderful campaign banners, some of them perhaps featuring some of this year's seniors. So there will be signs of life, lots and lots of signs of vitality. And you will find the Blue Line, you will find Hartman Green, you will find all your favorite places, but there will be new places that can become favorites as well.
You've mentioned favorite places on campus, and then you mentioned all the fine restaurants in Lancaster. And as a Lancaster native, I'd love to ask you what exploring you've done in the local community, and perhaps even some places that our first-year students should check out, close to campus or in the city that you've explored.
From here, you can walk in 10 minutes to really great food in almost any direction. So John and I have taken it under, we have made a serious campaign to check out the restaurants because we feel obliged to know what they are. We also are real foodies and we love to eat well, and Lancaster is fabulous. So I think my list would be much like anybody else's. If you haven't been to Central Market, you have to go to Central Market. It is an institution here. It's the oldest continuous farmers market in the country, and it just has a very special feel. It's a great place to see a cross-section of the city of Lancaster and well beyond as well. We have walked up and down Prince Street and Queen Street. We have explored a lot around our neighborhood, which is especially beautiful, and we're looking forward to start making trips beyond the city limits. We're hikers and bikers. John is a rower, so we're looking forward to exploring the natural resources around us here too. It turns out you're keeping me pretty busy in this job, so I haven't had a whole lot of time to explore yet, but especially once the temperature drops about 20 degrees, we'll be outdoors a lot and I'll have better answers for you.
Well, thank you so much for answering our questions. I feel like we've monopolized your time with our ideas. At this point, we'd like to open it up to questions from the community. I believe that the microphone, there's one microphone here today, right here in the center, so we're going to open it up now.
Thanks, Josh. All right, so if there are students who would like to ask questions, please come on up to this microphone, and we'd like to get a line here so that President Altmann has a sense of just how many questions there are.
I see the questions walking up now. Hooray. Hello.
And please introduce yourself and your class year and major if you have one.
Hey, I am Zagam Abbas. I'm a junior. My major is computer science and mathematics. I have just like a little thing. I understand that you are the new president. Change is gonna happen, it's coming. But there was this like one little thing, like last president had like ice cream, fridge. Yeah. Yeah, so like, anyone could just walk in at any time in Old Mine and just grab something, meet the president, say hi. Can you just possibly look into reintroducing that? They like took it away, like, it was an important part of my diet, you need to understand.
I'm so glad the ice cream question came first. I knew it was inevitable. So I'll give you the answer that I gave all of our tour guides the other day when I met with them. The ice cream freezer was really President Porterfield's signature. He had it at Georgetown before he came to F&M. He had it here immediately. My guess is there's now an ice cream freezer at the Aspen Institute, right, where he's gone. So the ice cream freezer is a Porterfield initiative, and it's no longer in the president's office, but the ice cream freezer will make pop-up appearances on campus. It has not gone away, it has not been sold. Watch for it. We will announce unexpectedly on a day in the middle of term that the ice cream freezer is reappearing in a given location, and you will have a chance to go and see it. Also, we couldn't just shut the thing and give it away, right? Also, I want to tell you that I'm going to call it the Porter Fridge. Okay? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Got that
Thanks a
one
lot.
cleared up right away.
Gee, I don't know how I top free ice cream. So you talk a lot about oh, sorry. My name's Alec Grant. I'm a freshman class 2022, and I do not know what my major is. You talk a lot about how academics are valuable and how they're great here at F&M, but you also said to stretch the social aspects and the relationships of it. How important are relationships, and can you give an example about how a specific relationship has helped you out through your academic career?
Thank you for that question, and it gives me a chance to say something that I didn't say earlier, which is absolutely critical. So relationships are what it's all about, and one of the most important things you can do is form real relationships with your faculty. So you have to get to know your professors. They have a wealth to teach you, to engage you in well beyond your classes or the lab or the rehearsal stage, right? So, in fact, I charged all the first years, I hope you heard this. I asked you by the end of your first week to meet with at least one professor and 2 if you can manage. So one of the things that we can do so well here is we can put our students in direct communication with our really outstanding faculty from day one. And if you don't do that, you'll be missing out on something that really will help catapult you into intellectual inquiry and maturity really, really quickly. So go and take up my challenge, young man, and go meet with one of your professors today and tomorrow, okay? As well as making friends across as broad a social spectrum as you can possibly manage. All right?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Good man. Okay. Yes.
Hello, my name is Gabe. I'm a senior. And so I just had a question about finances actually at the school. Throughout my 4th year here, we've seen our tuition rise by about 4% each year. And obviously this isn't just a problem that's facing Franklin and Marshall, but rather like liberal arts colleges as a whole. And I was just wondering if you, as you've become president, if you have any plans to address this like rising increase in prices, just because I think it makes the college less accessible to different populations as tuition continues to rise.
Yeah, you asked a great question. Thank you for that question. It's on everybody's minds, and you can be sure that it's one of the things that keeps presidents up at 3:30 in the morning, right? That is one of the biggest questions that we are all grappling with. As you pointed out, and you're quite right, Franklin and Marshall is not alone in that, right? Every institution of higher education wrestles with how much do we need to raise tuition next year, how much can we afford to raise tuition next year, and obviously we would like to keep it at just as modest as we can. What happens is that the tuition and the comprehensive fee, what you pay for tuition and room and board or fees, that fee is a big and scary number for many, many families and for many individuals. What we do, and what many other liberal arts colleges do, is we find ways to make our financial aid just as generous as we can so that we are meeting families and individuals at their ability to pay. So while the number itself looks unbelievably large, this college has made a very bold move, which is to do away with virtually all forms of merit aid, other than some named scholarships that we have, and to invest all of our resources into financial aid. That means that F&M graduates actually come out with a level of student debt that is considerably below the national average, and that debt has dropped, the level of debt has dropped over the last few years. So we're funneling our resources into where it's needed most so that the cost of coming to F&M should never be the hurdle that prevents somebody from coming here. We've made a big statement with that under Dr. Porterfield, and we've really redone our budget in order to make a statement there and bring people in, giving as much help as we can as we take into consideration their means and their needs. So there's multiple ways to attack that, and simply the number itself is just the beginning of the story, okay?
Hi, my name's Arlie. I'm a sophomore, and you spoke some about helping increase with what we're strong and our strengths, but I think one of the best ways to grow is to identify weaknesses and grow that. So if you were to pick something that you see as a weakness of F&M and how you would help that, what would you say?
Wow, that's a really good question. Thank you. I guess if we're asking you to do it individually, we ought to do it as an institution too, right? I'm going to backtrack just a moment because I wanted to, and this is actually in a way an answer to your question and in a way an answer to the previous student who spoke. I think one of our weaknesses and one of the things we need to do that is a top priority is we need to continue to raise money for financial aid. So that is actually at the very top of our priorities for the capital campaign, and we need to make the case to our donors and our alumni that helping students attend here, no matter what their financial means, is the single biggest thing we can do. So if we have a weakness, it is that we cannot yet afford full financial aid for everybody. And that's a lot to strive for, but one of the things we will be doing very actively over the next few years with the campaign is making sure that we've got the endowment and the scholarship money so that we can continue to meet people's needs. It's part of what I was referring to when I said that F&M is outperforming a lot of its metrics. Our current financial resources are really stretched, and one of the reasons for the campaign is to bring in more help. So
right.
That's one.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Hi.
Hello, Dr. Altmann. I'm Luke Roth. I'm a senior here. I'm just going to actually bring this up a little.
Yeah, you're tall. Move it up.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. So I apologize in advance because this may be kind of a toughie to put you on the spot, but in these past few years, we've been, I feel like, making a lot of leaps and bounds as far as the diversity of our campus. But do you have any ideas as far as initiatives for increasing the inclusivity and kind of integration of our campus?
So that's what I love about F&M students. They ask all the hard questions. That was another terrific question. So your question, I think, is about how to make all of the different component parts of our student body actually interact with each other meaningfully. Did I understand you correctly? Yeah. That is something that every one of us as an individual need to do from our own particular roles, right? So one of the things there's already an initiative that's well underway to continue to diversify our faculty so that students see themselves reflected in our faculty. That's really critical, and we're making great gains there. It does happen on both the institutional level and on the individual level. So what it's going to take is everybody moving out of their comfort zone to connect with someone with whom they didn't grow up. You know, somebody who is from a different region of the country, someone who's from a different country in the world, someone who speaks a different first language, somebody who's interested in very different things. Really, F&M and all liberal arts colleges are a microcosm for what needs to happen across the country and across the world. We need to act like global citizens here on our own campus, and we need to be inclusive in every one of our institutionalized programs, and everybody here needs to get out of their own blinkered lives. We all grow up in certain ways, and we all stand to gain a huge amount from breaking out of that. So it happens at the individual level, it happens at the programmatic level, it happens at the college level, and it happens among our alumni. So next year, for example, we'll be celebrating the 50th anniversary of a return to coeducation, right? Believe it or not, it was a big deal when F&M included women in the student body again. And that's just one small piece of the inclusiveness that we now embody. But it's a process every time, every year, every new identity we open to and is represented in our wonderful community, everybody needs to embrace it. So work on it every day in every way. That's my job and it's everybody's job. Thank you.
Welcome to FNN.
Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Altmann. Ooh, sorry.
Okay.
My name is Will. I'm a junior doing a joint major in government and religious studies. A little bit of a tough question here, too, I won't lie. I attended the wonderful student leadership seminar offered by Club Council and the Office of Student Engagement and Leadership the other day. And one of the hot button issues amongst student organizations is hazing within their ranks. And I was just wondering how your administration, with the wonderful Office of the Dean of the College, would be pursuing hazing in a more meaningful and impactful way to help student organizations deal with it and prevent it.
Well, thank you again. I knew that you would be sending me all the tough questions, and that's appropriate. It's my job to be able to answer them. So my immediate answer is the training that you attended is a big piece of the solution, right? So Vice President and Dean of Student Affairs, Margaret Hazlett, will be leading that initiative. My initial reaction, and my reaction always will be that hazing is simply unacceptable and can't be tolerated. It is deeply ingrained in various forms of subculture, but it is not the way we can operate ethically and morally and with inclusivity. So I think the fact that you have already done a training and we're only on day 2 of classes is a very good sign that we are addressing this proactively. You can be sure that I take it with great seriousness and I will not turn a blind eye. I'm convinced that we have a very good professional staff to take the lead in making sure that we can explain why it's such an undesirable and harmful practice. So I'm confident that we're doing well. There are always ways to do even more, and I'll be working closely with Student Affairs to figure out how we continue to address it on campus. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's funny because I'm not tall, so it's the opposite. My name is Helena. I'm a senior here. And over the years, you become a part of a lot of organizations, whether that's Greek life or just clubs around campus. So I want to know if you have any steps in how you want to be involved in Greek life, or just because it can be hard, sometimes it's a topic that no one wants to talk about, but do you have any steps about how you want to communicate to not only Greek life, but just organizations overall with F&M students?
I want to get out to meet as many students as I can and to meet with as many organizations as I can. You will perhaps laugh to hear that. At my previous institution, I lived next door to a fraternity house. So I have been up close on the front lines, and in fact, you know what, they were good neighbors. So I want to make sure that I am accessible to and interacting with our Greek life houses and organizations just as much as with other student organizations. The founding principles on which fraternities and sororities are launched are really often noble and idealistic, right? The founding principles are of very high order. And I think where we sometimes run afoul is in the way it plays out in the day-to-day. But I would love to meet with Panhellenic. I would love to meet with the leaders of the houses. And I'd love to talk to you about this. I'd like to hear what it sounds like from your perspective.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So we've got time for just one more question.
Sorry, that'll leave one person out, but I'll tell you what, we'll find another time to talk.
Okay. So this might be the last question. Hi. Yeah. Hi, Dr. Altmann. My name is Yi Chen, and I'm a freshman here. So some people might say liberal arts education sometimes come with a sort of a bubble. So what would be your advice regarding what efforts we could make to break the bubble and actually stretch and go outside?
Break the bubble of campus, the bubble of the college?
Yeah, like the whole stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so
That's where I want to come back to the fact that we are located in this really wonderful, small, rich urban environment. And I can understand that you will get comfortable in a range of concentric circles, right? First you meet your roommate, then you get to know your house, then you find your way to all your classes, then you figure out where the rec center is, and your circles, concentric circles will continue to grow. Go out and explore the city. Go out for First Friday. Just go out to the market. Go have a cup of coffee somewhere, as the mayor invited you to do. Just walk through the streets. Walk off campus 6 blocks in any direction, and you will find that your world is richer and you are more comfortable here because you set foot off campus. We all have to be explorers and pioneers. You have to think about it as going through uncharted territory and figuring out what you like, where you want to hang out, where do you take pleasure in being off campus. So it's a big world, but Lancaster is a manageable city, a safe city, a very, very navigable city. So I would say go sooner rather than later. Just take a walk every evening and go in a different direction and see which way you want to go the next time. It's really worth it. I've been exploring. My first thing, whenever I'm in a new place, I immediately put down my bags and go out and walk. I encourage you to do the same, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's thank President Altmann and the panelists for a great Common Hour, and we'll see you next Thursday in Mazer.
See you next week. Thank you.